Hello, welcome back to another episode of From Prison to the Streets. I'm Eric. I did 11 years in prison. In this video, I'm going to be talking some more about my story. I talked about when I went to the mental hospital, and now I'm going to talk to you about what happened when I got back from the mental hospital. So, be sure to like and subscribe. Let's get it. I had been in county jail. I talked about that in the previous video along this line. And I got sent to a mental hospital. I thought that my father was dying or something was wrong with my father, so I flipped out, started punching a wall. And I got sent to a mental hospital, then I got sent to another mental hospital, and then they decided that I was taking up bed space that could be better used by somebody else. So they went ahead and sent me back to the county jail. Now remember, I was 17 years old when this was going on. I was facing life in prison. I had a lot on my mind. When other people were getting ready to go off to college, I was getting ready to go off to prison. And they had me cut and dry. They knew it. I knew it. Didn't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, I was looking at spending life in prison before my life had really started, so I was really stressed out. And after I went to the two mental hospitals, I was on a lot of medication. That's really all they did for me. They jacked me up on meds, sent me back to the county jail. Before we go further, don't be a prick. Words to live by. So, they send me back to county. At this point, it was Allen County Jail. And they put me right back on suicide watch because it's their policy. When you get back into the facility from a mental health unit or a mental hospital or something like that, you have to be on suicide watch for 72 hours, I believe it was. So that's what happened. I went to an observation cell. Mirrored glass on all sides except for one, pretty much. And cameras on you constantly. It kind of reminded me of a scene from Silence of the Lambs and other Hannibal movies when he's in a cell made out of plexiglass. Those are real. I saw quite a few of them in prison, and the mirrored glass is a little bit different in county jail, but that's kind of what it felt like. And I had a concrete slab with a little mat on it that I could sleep on, and that was that. Cameras on you constantly, even when you take a shit. Not really fun. And there's two great big AC vents in that cell where they were holding me, and they were constantly pumping cold air into the cell. So small cell, it was cold. You don't have a lot of blankets or anything like that. You get one blanket. It's a suicide blanket. It's not warm. You're wearing a smock. It's just unpleasant overall. So at that point, I went to a pod after I had been in there 72 hours. And for that 72 hours, I just worked out. I didn't eat much off the trays that they brought because the food is horrible. In county, it's better than prison. I'll give you that, but it was still really rough. Didn't eat much food, did a lot of push-ups, did a lot of pacing around. Sometimes I would entertain myself by taking the styrofoam cup that was given to us with the trays. They would bring us a cup of Kool-Aid in the evening, and I would take that cup and I would put it in the corner of the cell, and I would make little balls of toilet paper, and I would sit on the floor and throw those little balls of toilet paper in the cup. My little version of basketball while I was locked up in a suicide cell. Nothing to do. You have to keep your mind occupied. And when you're in isolation for a while, that's what keeps you sane, is finding a way to occupy your mind. If you don't, and this is coming from someone who spent, a couple years in the hole at one point, if you're in isolation for a long time and you don't keep your mind occupied somehow, you'll start hearing voices. You'll start having paranoid delusions that people are out to get you. It's pretty crazy what the mind does when it's in that situation. So after I was on suicide watch for 72 hours. They put me back in a pod. They actually moved me in with my old cellie. His name was Ronnie Brandt. He had been the max yard hammer for 2 years in Lansing at one point, because he'd been to prison before. He was in his 30s, and I think he was in prison under suspicion for murder, or in jail because he was suspected of a murder. I don't think they ever got him for it. I think they got him for robbery or something like that. But he was a big guy, big white dude, bald. He was over 6 foot tall, probably 240, 250, somewhere around there, maybe even more. He was a big dude. Spent most of, his life in and out of prison, lifting weights and stuff, getting in gang fights. And he was a neo-Nazi type. He was trying to get out of that lifestyle. He was turning his life over to Christ, which, I'm not into Christianity, but I respect someone who's trying to make a positive change in their life, and he was trying to do that. So I was basically in the cell, back out in the pod for one night. And I'll tell you what happened. I didn't get all of my meds when they sent me back from the hospital. They only had, a little bit of my medication. And they had me on these meds that were like a stimulant. They would really amp me up, make me super jittery. I was only sleeping 2 hours a night. And then they had another medication they were giving me called Geodon, which is a really heavy tranquilizer. It's an antipsychotic. And, that is the only thing that brought me back down after they gave me a dose of that other stuff that amped me up. Well, when they put me back in the pod, that night they ran out of my Geodon. And so I was just super amped up, kind of tripping out a little bit, just shaking real bad, real antsy. If you've ever been amped up, if you've ever done methamphetamines or cocaine or something like that, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, imagine drinking like 3 or 4 pots of coffee. Then you'll have some idea of what it's like. And being sleep deprived for weeks on end. Add to that a whole bunch of stress, you have a recipe for disaster. So I was in the cell, pacing back and forth. Ronnie said, hey, you're really strung out. Why don't you just come down to the table in the day room, play some cards with us, and, get your mind off things and kind of calm down and relax a little bit. I said, all right, and I went down to the day room. In reality, I should not have been around people at that point, because when I'm on uppers, I'm violent. I'm very aggressive. I'm very hostile. I got a mouth. I get into fights. If I'm all amped up and sleep deprived, I'm not a pleasant person to be around. I will fight at the drop of a hat. That's where I was at. I go down to this table, and there's some new guy in the pod. He wasn't there before I went to the mental hospital, and we're playing cards. And he starts talking trash. And finally, I had had enough. I looked at the guy sitting across from me, and I don't even remember what he was saying that pissed me off. But I just remember snapping. I looked at him. I said, hey, who the fuck are you? You think I give a fuck about you? I'm looking at 60 years. I don't give a fuck. We can go fight right now. Let's go in the shower. Let's fight. Because the showers had a steel door on them. It was a room with, in county, there's like, I don't know, a few shower heads, not very many. We only went in there one at a time because there weren't that many of us in the pod. It was a ag pod. It was a max security pod. Everyone in there was in there for a serious crime, high profile crime, whatever. So it had a big steel door on the shower, and they ran showers. It had an electronic lock on the door. So that door would open first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock, and it would be open for a half hour. After that half hour, they were supposed to close the shower and it would lock automatically and it would be locked for the rest of the day. But in Allen County, they never did security checks. They never walked around the pod. So that shower pretty much stayed open all day. And so the shower was unlocked. And we could go in there and fight, and close the door a little bit behind us and leave the door ajar. Go in there, scrap it out, and come back out and not get caught. I told the dude, let's go to the shower right now. But the dude was scared. And he agreed to it. He agreed to go to the shower, but I could tell he was scared. And we head over to the shower. I walk in, and he slammed the door behind me. Door locked automatically. So I was locked in the shower. And I punched and kicked at that door. It was not opening, solid steel door, not going anywhere. And there was an intercom button in the shower. And I had to hit that button to get out of the shower because I was locked in. Cops wanted to know why I was locked in the shower. I wouldn't tell them. I didn't say anything. I just hit the intercom button. They said, wanted to know what was up. I said, I'm locked in the shower. Come let me out. They said, why are you in the shower? And I said, look, I'm locked in the shower. Come let me out. So they locked everybody down in the pod. Because at this point, I had a reputation for being a troublemaker. I was punching the walls, doing all sorts of shit. And, they thought that I was a hothead, which I was. I was a hothead. I about got into it pretty bad with a couple people. And they came down to the shower. They opened it. They had, 2 or 3 officers come and they opened the shower and they said, well, until we figure out what's going on, we're going to be locked down for a bit. You need to go back to your cell. So they escorted me up to my cell, and they closed the door, and then they asked my cellie about what was going on. And he told them what was going on, which surprised me, being a guy who had served time in prison. You're not supposed to tell that sort of thing, but maybe he felt bad because I was a kid or something like that. And he said, well, him and someone else got into it, and the dude locked him in the shower. He didn't say any names, and he had a rapport with the officers there because he had a history, but he wasn't causing trouble for him. So, he could talk him into stuff. And he said, look, him and the other guy, it's nothing serious. They didn't end up fighting, I think you guys should just let it go. Let them both cool down for a bit and it'll be fine. And they said, yeah, that sounds good. And, they left us locked down. They went downstairs and left the pod. And Ronnie started laughing at me. He was sitting down on the stool in the cell. I'm pacing back and forth. I was pissed. And he said, yeah, man, that was a bitch move, that guy locking you in the shower. He's a scary motherfucker. He said, but it was funny, and he's laughing, and I'm pissed. I don't want to hear this guy laughing at me. Even if he is the size of a mountain, and I wasn't. I was maybe between 200 and 210 pounds at the time, 5'9". Very athletic and muscular, for my age, but I wasn't like Ronnie. I hadn't been to prison and working out for 20 years or something. I wasn't built like I ate dumbbells for breakfast like Ronnie. But I wasn't scared of the dude either. And I'm not going to let somebody disrespect me. So I turned around and I said, hey man, stop laughing. And he started getting kind of hot. He said, no, I'm not going to stop laughing. Don't tell me what to do. I said, I'm telling you right now, stop fucking laughing at me. So Ronnie gets up and he grabs me by my neck and he hits me, right? He had me by my neck with one hand and he hit me with his other. Everything went black for a split second. Sometimes if you get hit really hard, things will go dark just for a split second. It didn't really hurt. I heard it more than I felt it. That's how I am when I fight. You can hit me really, really hard, and I won't really feel it till the next day. I'll hear it. I'll be aware that you hit me, but I won't really feel it. And then he looked at me, brought me in close, and he said, you better hit that button. Talking about the intercom button on the wall. He said, you better hit that button and tell the cops to come save your ass. I said, I'm not afraid of you. He said, you want to go? We're going to go. And famous last words. Because he grabbed me by the neck and he picked me up and he hit the back of my head on the concrete frame of the door. You know, there was a little, the cells were made out of cinder block. And so there was the edge of the door frame at the top of the door was a corner, you know, a hard corner of a cinder block. And he hit the back of my head on that. And I don't even remember that. I remember him picking me up. The last thing I thought was, man, I'm looking down at this big motherfucker. How am I looking down at him? And I realized that he had me by the neck and he was picking me up. Next thing you know, I went out. Like, he knocked me out when he hit my head on that. And the next thing I remember, the cops were scraping me off the floor. I was on the ground, and the cops were picking me up off the floor, asking me what happened. Well, he hit the button. Before he knocked me out, before he picked me up by the neck, he reached over and hit the button, and then he knocked me out. And he was screaming at me the whole time. So the cops heard him screaming. And they came up there. Well, when I came to, they were picking me up off the floor. They were asking what was going on and stuff. And Ronnie was going off about how I was crazy and that I was going to kill somebody and they needed to do something about me and all this stuff. And me and Ronnie had to talk about this later. In my book, that's telling. So, you know, I had some opinions about it. And, you know, he's yelling all this shit. And they asked me what was going on. And I'm like, well, we fought. He knocked me out, you know. So, and I shouldn't have said that much, you know, because it could have got him in trouble. But here he is saying that I'm crazy and I'm going to kill somebody. And here I am looking at attempted murder. So he shouldn't have said what he said either. You know, it was kind of wrong on both of our parts, and we both knew better. But neither of us got in trouble. Well, he didn't get in trouble anyway. I got in trouble. They sent me to the hole, which was the observation cell that I just got out of, and they kept me there. Like, they didn't let me out. I was in that observation cell. It wasn't suicide watch. I wasn't in a suicide smock, but they had me in that observation cell with none of my property, no hygiene stuff, nothing. And they kept me there for 2 months. 2 months they kept me there. And they wouldn't let me shower. They wouldn't let me talk to my family. They wouldn't let me use a phone. I couldn't talk to my lawyer. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. 2 months. Until finally, one night, I got up when one of the cooler jailers was working. His name was Jeff. I forget his last name, but I hollered at him, got him to come over to my door. I said, look, I've been in here for a long time. I didn't even know what day it was. I didn't have any idea how long I had been in there because they would shut the lights off in the cell. I didn't have control over the light switch. They did. And they would shut the lights off in the cell for days at a time. And then they would turn the lights on in the cell for days at a time. So my sleep cycle, everything, nothing was right. I couldn't see a clock. I couldn't see the sky. I couldn't see outside, anything like that. I had no idea how long I had been in there. But one night Jeff was on. I knew that Jeff worked nights, and, there was no noise, nobody coming in and out of booking. So I knew that it was nighttime, and I got Jeff to come over the door. I said, "Hey man, I've been in here for a long time. I haven't talked to my family. I haven't talked to my lawyer. I haven't had a shower. Is there any way you could let me out to use the phone and take a shower?" And Jeff's like, "You know what? Normally I couldn't do that, but you haven't been giving me any problems or anything, so I'm going to let you do that. As soon as we do count tonight, I'm going to take you out, give you a shower, and let you use the phone, and I'm going to put you back in. Just don't give me any problems." And that's what went down. I got out, he came, let me out. He gave me a comb and some toothpaste and a toothbrush. I took a shower, brushed my teeth, combed my hair, and he let me use the phone. I called my dad. My dad was freaking out. He's like, "Where have you been? I haven't heard from you. I was worried about you." Because I wasn't even getting mail. I couldn't write letters or anything. And I told him what was happening. And he said, "Well, first thing in the morning, I'm calling your lawyer. And I'm going to call the jail, and I'm calling the attorney general. And we're going to get this fixed." And he did get it fixed. The next day, by noon, I was back in the pod. And they moved me into a different cell, but I was back in the pod. Matter of fact, I was in a cell by myself. They put me on lockdown in the pod. But I was in the pod. I had the opportunity to use the shower every morning before the other inmates were out. They would let seg inmates, basically inmates that were troublemakers or inmates who were PC'd up, they would let them out to use the phone and take a shower for like a half hour, 45 minutes. And that's what they did. And, that's what happened. So I hope you liked this episode. I'm going to do more episodes like it. I'm sorry I haven't been on point with my content lately. I've been building a porch for a friend, and had a friend of mine, a young man, teenager, who was going down a bad path, ended up going to jail and stuff. He's staying with me, trying to get him back on the right track. And so I've had my hands full for the last few days, but we're going to make some videos, get them up for you guys. I really appreciate you watching. I love you guys, and I will see you next time. This is Eric from Prison and Streets. I'll see y'all later. Break these chains. They can't